Burrow, he's a fantastic quarterback. Like I say, he's going to be patient in the pocket. He's going to step into his throws.
What if I told you that the quarterback who just led the Cincinnati Bengals to their first Super Bowl appearance in 33 years was once considered too small, too slow, and not good enough for his dream school? This is the story of Joe Burrow, a journey that proves sometimes the most unlikely heroes make the greatest champions. From a small town in Ohio to the bright lights of the NFL, Joe Burrow's path to stardom wasn't paved with five-star recruiting rankings or guaranteed scholarships. Instead, it was built on rejection, perseverance, and an unshakable belief that he belonged among the elite. Today, we are diving deep into how an overlooked kid from Athens, Ohio became the face of a franchise and one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL. Joseph Lee Burrow was born on December 10, 1996 in Ames, Iowa. But his football story really begins in Athens, Ohio. His father, Jim Burrow, was a defensive coordinator at Ohio University, which meant that football wasn't just a game in the Burrow household, it was a way of life. Growing up in a college town, Joe was surrounded by the sport from day one. He spent countless hours in the Ohio University facilities, watching film with his dad and absorbing the nuances of the game. But here's the thing. Despite his football IQ and natural leadership abilities, Joe wasn't the prototype quarterback that college scouts were looking for. At Athens High School, Burrow was good. Really good. He threw for over 11,000 yards and 157 touchdowns during his high school career. But at 6'1", and lacking the cannon arm that many recruiters coveted, he was often overlooked. The recruiting process was brutal. Ohio State, his dream school and the program that he'd grown up rooting for, barely gave him a second look. Despite the lack of interest from major programs, Burrow's talent couldn't be completely ignored. Ohio State eventually offered him a scholarship, but it came with a catch. He'd be walking into a quarterback room already crowded with higher-ranked recruits. For 3 years at Ohio State, Burrow waited his turn. He redshirted his freshman year, then spent the next 2 seasons buried on the depth chart behind players like J.T. Barrett and Dwayne Haskins. It was during this time that Burrow's character was truly forged. While other players might have transferred immediately, Joe used this time to study, to learn, and to prove his worth in practice every single day. But by 2018, it became clear that his path to playing time at Ohio State was blocked. The coaching staff had made their decision. Dwayne Haskins was their guy. Now, for most players, this would have been devastating. For Joe Burrow, it was just another obstacle to overcome. The decision to transfer wasn't easy. Leaving Ohio State meant leaving behind his childhood dreams and admitting that his original plan hadn't worked out. But sometimes the best decisions are the hardest ones to make. When Joe Burrow announced his transfer to LSU in May of 2018, most college football fans barely noticed. LSU was known for defense and running the ball, not exactly the ideal destination for a quarterback looking to showcase his skills. But sometimes the perfect storm happens when you least expect it. Burrow's first season at LSU in 2018 was solid, but unremarkable. He threw for 2,894 yards and 16 touchdowns, leading the Tigers to a 10-4 record. Respectable numbers, but nothing that screamed future NFL superstar. What people didn't see was what was happening behind the scenes. Joe was building relationships with his receivers, learning a new system, and most importantly, developing the swagger that would become his trademark. The turning point came during the 2019 offseason, when LSU hired Joe Brady as their passing game coordinator. Brady brought an NFL-style offense that perfectly suited Burrow's skill set. The 2019 season was nothing short of magical. Burrow didn't just have a good year, he had one of the greatest seasons in college football history. He threw for 5,671 yards and 60 touchdowns, both SEC records. He completed 76.3% of his passes, a completion percentage that seemed almost impossible. But it wasn't just the statistics that made Burrow special that season, it was the way he performed in the biggest moments. Against Alabama, with the college football world watching, Burrow threw for 393 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 46-41 victory that announced LSU as a legitimate national championship contender. The Heisman Trophy ceremony in December of 2019 was supposed to be a close race. It wasn't. Joe Burrow won by the largest margin in Heisman history, receiving 90.7% of the first-place votes. His acceptance speech was humble, yet confident, thanking his hometown of Athens, Ohio, and bringing attention to the poverty and food insecurity issues in his community. But the Heisman was just the beginning. The real test came in the college football playoff. LSU entered the playoffs as the #1 seed, but they would have to prove that they belonged by beating the best teams in the country. In the Peach Bowl semifinal against Oklahoma, Burrow threw for 493 yards and 7 touchdowns in a 63-28 demolition. Then came the ultimate test, the national championship game against Clemson, a team that has won 2 of the previous 3 national titles. With the college football world watching, Burrow delivered a performance for the ages. He threw for 463 yards and 5 touchdowns, leading LSU to a 42-25 victory and their first national championship since 2007. In that moment, Joe Burrow had transformed from an overlooked transfer to a legend. The Cincinnati Bengals held the #1 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, and the choice was obvious. Joe Burrow was selected first overall, bringing hope to a franchise that had been struggling for decades. But Burrow's rookie season was far from a fairy tale. The Bengals were still a team in transition, with a questionable offensive line and limited weapons on offense. Despite throwing for 2,688 yards and 13 touchdowns in 10 games, the season ended in disaster when Burrow suffered a devastating knee injury against Washington in Week 11. The injury was crushing, a torn ACL and MCL that would require extensive surgery and rehabilitation. For a player who had already overcome so much adversity, this felt like the cruelest blow of all. But if there's one thing that we know about Joe Burrow, it's that he doesn't stay down for long. Burrow's rehabilitation was intense and methodical. He attacked his recovery with the same dedication that he'd shown throughout his career, working with the best trainers and medical staff to ensure that he'd come back stronger than ever. The 2021 season began with cautious optimism. Could Burrow return to his pre-injury form? Would the Bengals finally have the pieces in place to compete? The answer became clear very quickly. Not only was Joe Burrow back, but he was better than ever. The 2021 Bengals were a revelation. Burrow threw for 4,611 yards and 34 touchdowns, leading the team to its first NFC North title since 2015. But it was in the playoffs where Burrow truly announced himself as an elite NFL quarterback. In the wild card round against Las Vegas, Burrow threw for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 26-19 victory. The following week, in one of the most memorable playoff games in recent memory, the Bengals defeated the top-seeded Tennessee Titans 19-16, with Burrow making clutch throws throughout the game. The AFC Championship game against Kansas City was the stuff of legends. Facing Patrick Mahomes and the defending AFC champions, many expected the Bengals' magical run to end. Instead, Joe Burrow delivered one of the most clutch performances in playoff history. Despite being sacked 9 times by the Chiefs' pass rush, Burrow never lost his composure. He threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown pass to Jamar Chase with under 2 minutes remaining. The Bengals won 27-24 in overtime, sending Cincinnati to its first Super Bowl since 1989. Super Bowl 56 against the Los Angeles Rams was heartbreaking for Bengals fans, but it solidified Burrow's reputation as a clutch performer. Despite being under constant pressure from the Rams defense, Burrow threw for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns, nearly leading the Bengals to their first Super Bowl title. The loss stung, but it also provided motivation. Joe Burrow had taken a franchise that had been the laughingstock of the NFL and had turned them into champions. More importantly, he'd shown that he belonged among the elite quarterbacks in the league. Today, Joe Burrow is widely regarded as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. His combination of accuracy, pocket presence, and clutch gene has made him the face of the Cincinnati Bengals and one of the most exciting players in the league. But what makes Burrow truly special isn't just his on-field performance, it's his leadership and character. He's brought a winning culture to Cincinnati, transforming a franchise that has been defined by disappointment into a legitimate Super Bowl contender. From his humble beginnings in Athens, Ohio, to his struggles at Ohio State, to his magical season at LSU, to his emergence as an NFL star, Joe Burrow's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and belief in yourself. Joe Burrow's story reminds us that the path to greatness isn't always linear. Sometimes the setbacks and rejections that seem like roadblocks are actually redirections toward our true destiny. From underdog to elite, Joe Burrow has proven that with enough determination, talent, and heart, any dream is possible. What's your favorite Joe Burrow moment? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, don't forget to subscribe for more incredible sports stories like this one.